welcome to Galactic Grandmother Heart to Heart. My name is April, and my special guest today is Martin Rivera. Martin is a quantum healing hypnosis therapist, otherwise known as QHHT. It's a very special technique originally developed by Dolores Cannon. This is part 2. We had a wonderful part 1 in which he introduced himself and told us about his personal spiritual journey and how he got into the QHHT. And we had a very interesting message from a higher consciousness being that came through on his sister's first session. I will link part 1 below this one so that you can watch that. In this part 2, we're going to dive deeper into more messages that Martin has received from these higher consciousness beings. So welcome. It's so nice to have you back, Martin.
Thank you so much, April, for having me one more time.
And maybe again. You've got so much to offer us. And I'm always interested in educating the public for expanding everyone's mind, including my own. So what is new with you?
Well, besides doing sessions, interviews, and lately I had an experience one more again in Montauk. I live in Long Island in New York.
Uh-huh.
And from a client, we had a message from, higher self. And then this client was experiencing a past life where she was a guardian of a temple that hasn't been discovered yet in Egypt, in ancient Egypt. And
Ooh.
he was a guardian for this, very sacred temple. And he described that there was like this like sacred tree, right? And then
A sacred
yes, sacred tree.
tree
Yes.
in Egypt?
Yes, in ancient Egypt.
Wow.
And then and was a very special tree that poured some water, but this water it's very special too. And then somehow in the conversation with higher self, explained that there were, this part was like very special because the energies were flowing from the earth very strong, right?
Uh-huh.
And I asked her if there was another place around the East Coast or New York or Long Island, and he said yes. And I say where? And then and mentioned Montauk. And Montauk in that session it describes that there is, well, actually there are 3 huge crystals, like a skyscraper size. You cannot see them. They're like under the water, really. But it was mentioned that there the energy flows, the same.
Oh.
So I was like, my following question was like, how can we tap into that energy, And how I said, just be like children and play like children. I'm like, that's it? No meditation or any ritual, any ceremony? No, just play like children and you'll tap into
Wow.
that energy. But after that, he said, but you must invite people over. So we did. And sure enough, we were playing and all that. And then we have, activities too. And even we did yoga. And then I did a meditation. But sure enough, for a surprise, we were right in the lighthouse, like where there's like these huge rocks. So we just laying back, just taking a break, just enjoying, the place. And one of the ladies who came with us, she was like taking pictures, randomly pictures,
Uh-huh.
And one of the pictures there was a UFO in the sky.
Oh,
So I was like,
well,
oh my God.
awesome. So you had done a second session on your sister. And did you say that was about 4 years after the first one?
Yes, amazingly, like it was in October 30th of 2021. And actually she requested it, I think she goes like, I think we need to do another session. I was like, why, And she goes like, I think I needed a bit. And then because I had these weird events that happens during those 3 or 4 years, these incidents, they were unexplicable. Her motivation really to know what exactly happened. It is three. I want to name this. These three special events that happens, right? And
And was it for you and her?
on her, really, you know,
Okay, three
three.
events for her.
Yes, three events, strange events that unexplicable, like I said. And then the answer for her from higher self, what exactly happened? That was her motivation, right?
Uh-huh.
So here we go. So she was ready. Always the preparation is like, practice meditation, and then she likes to do like a little bit fasting too. I was like, you don't need to, but she's like, I wanted to, like, okay, whatever. So anyway, so here we go again. This time I was prepared, because like previously,
Uh-huh.
one of the self-proclaimed earth guardians, right?
Uh-huh.
One of them came through. So now I was like, now expecting something will happen, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So anyway, here we go. Yeah, and funny thing is, like, was almost the same as the first session. She started exploring a past life where she was a child. Here we go again. She was a child again. But here is the funny thing. Like, she started describing the scene like going to a forest or woods,
Mhm.
and she saw herself, because we always ask clients, how do you see, below yourself, and she's like, I have these like leather boots. And then sure enough, she started walking and she sees this beautiful woman. She describes her like an American Indian or indigenous people, or like Asian, kind of
Mhm.
like from India, kind of like that, because it's very similar too,
Right.
the
Right.
tan skin and all that. But the way she describes that, she's like, she's wearing this dress with plants and leaves, and butterflies are surrounding her, and birds too, you know and when she's like waving at her, like saying like, come, so she immediately went to her and grabbed her hand, like kind of like she knew her, you know what I mean.
Huh?
And then and the way she started describing her face is like, her face is changing from like beautiful young lady to like very old, and then young, and switch back and forth, like
Uh-huh.
changing.
Yeah.
And then sure enough, they go into a tree. She said, like, this like huge tree, and there's like it's hollow, and we go through it, and as soon as she goes right through it, she's like, it's like, it looks like a cave, and the cave is like halfway lighted, halfway is dark. And when she walks right in, she start, she sees other three beings.
Oh.
All right. So I asked her, what did they look like? And she immediately recognized Dermilak. He's there. But now he's not wearing a robe like the first time. Now he's like a white tight suit, you know.
Oh.
But
Yeah.
he looks the same with the long white hair and the long beard. And then I go like, what about the other two? The other two? He goes like, well, the second one, he looks like a reptile, but more like a amphibious, like amphibian, but and she said, like, very like confident, no, his face looks like a good guy. you know but he described like he was wearing like an armor, like a samurai armor, kind of
Oh.
like that, yeah. And his skin was kind of like green too, like light green. you
Mm-hmm.
know And then I go like, well, so what about the third one? The next one. And he goes like, oh, that looks like a bird, like a red bird. I was like, okay. So and she started describing his like like his feathers, like very thin. It
Mm-hmm.
looks like hair really. And they said the beak was like very small. And she said like he can see his lips were moving, like kind of like ours too. So I was like, okay. So I was like, okay, so, and she started describing herself like she's like sitting down in a like on the bottom was like a crystal clear water, like turquoise color, but it was like kind of like icy. But the first woman, her name is Temi.
Interesting.
Yes. So Temi, plays her on that part, and she's sitting down, right, like observing them. But she immediately goes like, "Oh, there's a translucent pyramid that surrounds me." I
Hmm.
was like, "Okay." So that's the way that meeting start happening. All right. So in that meeting, we start having this dialogue, between them, and then let me read that pretty quick. That the first dialogue that we had. So it's pretty good. It's pretty interesting because as we were talking, eventually they surprisingly they start speaking through my sister. But those are messages too that I want to share with the audience. All right.
Okay.
So here we go. So remember, we were like having this again, like three-way conversation, right? And she goes like, Dermilak says that there are many children, many new souls living on earth. A change is coming, a very, very big change. He says that earth is already tired, but they come to inject that green light. It is a renewal on earth. He says that they only come to give energy because they cannot intervene, only to give us strength. They came here to renew the earth. And then Rak is saying, Rak is the looking bird being,
Uh-huh.
right? That's his name. Okay, and he's saying that right now this meeting it symbolizes the councils. Each one represents the forces of Earth, but also the forces of the universe. Rak is red. Oshalk, which is the amphibian-looking guy,
Hmm.
is green. Dermilak is the white light. Temi is the earth. And he says that they hold this meeting and everything now that is happening on earth because they were sent by the council. The council sent them. And now here's my question. And I go like, and are the council from Earth or the galaxy? And Dermilak replies, he says that they are the set of the councils of the Earth and the Galaxy Federation. That many are receiving messages because we are the house of the envoys. We are a home because the earth is never going to be destroyed. It is only going to be a renew. And then they start mentioning about some crystals. As we follow the conversation, then they start speaking through my sister. So could you please just play those videos? All right. And then what do you guys think about, now that you guys heard how these four beings spoke through, my sister? And that was a big difference now in this session, because I remember the first session, they say no, it actually only one showed up, but now there were four. And now without even requesting it, they just came through and started speaking all these beautiful messages that I hope you guys understand.
When when she's describing these beings, do you see them in your mind's eye?
That's a good question. Not really, not this time. I had other times, yes, but not this time. I was very focused on it, to try to get more information, and then it was, because they touch, like you guys see, many topics too, you know.
Is there one topic that you'd like to speak on yourself?
That's a good question too. I guess it's when they're referring that because they were mentioned about what happens even into the pandemic. They say that that was like a cycle too, that many people were volunteered to transform the energy. That's something that stick with me too. And of course that they kept insisting about this change that is coming. Oh, it's we are in that process really,
Yeah.
and of course these new souls, these new volunteers are the key for that change.
And did they Do you know when that change is expected to happen?
We're in the process, really. They always say about this relation that we have from humans' emotions that is related into how we affect the planet as well. You know, the
Uh-huh.
karma or the behavior that we all have,
Right,
among each others, from the personal level to to politics, and
right.
in between countries as well. So just think about that added up, and how we are creating these disturbances in the
Mhm.
atmosphere, on the earth too. So we are part of that issue too. But we're changing too.
As we are speaking in this interview, Kilauea, the volcano in the Big Island, Hawaii, is erupting. And I think that's kind of interesting. Now, are there any earth changes predicted that you're aware of through these three beings, or maybe from some other sessions that you've done with other people?
That's very interesting, because I was shown in other sessions about a volcano. Really, yes, it was a session where uh, this client was like tapping into this other past life, but it wasn't in our Earth. It was an extraterrestrial or another planet, really.
Uh-huh.
Now she was describing herself like a being with no sex. Those type of being,
Yeah,
they had
yeah,
no organs, really.
right.
But the way she described it, like she was like nearby a volcano, right? And then she started describing the volcano was erupting. This is very interesting, because I wasn't speaking to herself. I was speaking to that being, but the being was aware of what's beyond what was, or what he was perceiving, right? So he goes like, because it's the way, it's a way of detoxifying all these emotions, all this drama that we created in this
Mhm.
planet, is the way to cleanse.
Oh, the negative energies.
Exactly. I was like,
Mm,
wow, So it's
yeah,
pretty
that
much the
makes
same.
sense.
Yes, it's pretty much the same dynamic that we're doing in here on Earth. So earthquakes, even the sun activity too, they mentioned about too. But pretty much they want us to take conscious in our behavior, in way of
Mindful.
exactly, yes. And more than, as you guys heard about, the nuclear pollution and all that, but as
Mhm.
well of our own emotions, our own behavior, that we must change that
Right.
in to help ourselves, but also help Earth.
Mhm.
And that's something that I asked, like, so these new volunteers is like, what's their priority, the people or Earth? And for my surprise, they said, first of all, Earth, because it's your
Uh-huh.
house. So, and then they say, that's their priority, really. And that's why they show my sister, about these crystals too, and how these new volunteers, new souls they have this energy, or they can anchor these energies from the universe, and it's symbiotic relationship between us and Earth too.
Right. And we receive so much from Earth as well.
Exactly. Yes. I guess the message is pretty clear. It's pretty loud. you know.
I was going to ask you about any other topics that are of interest in some of your sessions lately.
Oh boy. Yes, I have other ones. The other thing is like, um besides that people get healed, there's other people that have gifts. They have psych abilities.
Hmm.
Guess what? When they come to the session, there's like an upgrade during the session.
Whoa,
Yes, I had a
awesome.
client where um she had a background where she already has been channeling, and she only channels two beings, Archangel Michael and Mother Mary, or Mother of Jesus. But this is very interesting, because she had this ability, right, to channel and give brief messages, but she had events on her life that she could not understand either.
Hmm.
it's almost the same what happened to my sister. Our minds sometimes, or actually, like we always, or most of us, there's always a limitation to understand signs or these weird events that happens in people's lives that they cannot understand. So when they go into this, hypnosis, when we speak, directly to higher self, remember, we are not channelers. We don't do readings,
Mhm.
or any interpretation. Everything is laid out beautifully by higher self or high self or the oversoul or whatever you guys want to call it, right?
Yeah.
So when she came to the session, she goes like, I had these weird experiences in my childhood that I could not understand. And even I went to another hypnotherapist in South America that is not QHT method. That's another doctor that the typical clinical hypnosis and regressive.
Right.
And even though is a channeler, she cannot get it. So anyway, when she went on there and she started telling me about this event, and I'm gonna tell you guys that this is very interesting. She said like when she was 5 years old, right, between 4 and 5, she was playing outside on her house in the garden, and all of a sudden this being, she describes him like a midget. Funny hat. He's almost the same size of her because she was, just think about it, just 5 years old, right?
Right.
And this like weird looking being, like she said, she describes it like a midget, but kind of like shiny, like she was like emanating some type of like translucent light, but
Uh-huh.
she like running close to her and just running away quickly, and that surprised her, and she kept her on her mind for years and years, like thinking about like what exactly was it? Did I hallucinate it, or was it a dream, or what exactly it was, right?
Mhm.
So in this session, it was revealed that this being, he wasn't a midget. So I asked, so what is the original form? They say, oh, they don't have a form really. They don't have a physical body. I was like, so why did they present like that in like a midget? Oh, he goes like, because he wants to present himself to her on the same size because he was a child. So I
Mhm.
was like, my question was, so what was the experience for? He goes like, because he wanted to show to her that she's not alone, and this being was assigned to her. I was like, assigned from whom? And he goes like, because this being and her, they belong to the same civilization.
Oh.
I was like, what civilization are you talking about, here on Earth or somewhere else? He goes, no, not Earth, from Venus.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, okay. And as we go into the conversation, it was revealed that these beings, they're their family, and they learn whatever she's doing into this incarnation on Earth. They
Uh,
learn as well the ways of
right.
how humans behave and think and feel and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like a kind of like a meeting, really. And of course, she had another experience, later on, that she even described it like some type of gray being, like the typical grays, and she got scared. Hagesha said, no, it wasn't a gray. So he started describing like this kind of like a bluish gray kind of being, but it wasn't like she described it. And I was like, why did she interpret it like a gray being? He goes like, because she had no background on her mind to
Yeah.
compare. The mind automatically adjusting to interpret something that cannot understand. And when, in the human mind, when something is unknown, or you don't know what it is, it immediately goes into fear.
Right.
But it wasn't like
Yeah.
that. So I was like, who's this being again? The same. It's the same beings. So they were, how you said, explain that these beings were like shapeshifters too. They can, manifest the way they want it.
Yeah.
And going back to my sister, now that I, regain again this,
I was going to ask you that.
she was like this afternoon, well, late afternoon, almost evening. It was getting dark. It was like in the late fall, beginning to winter. Probably was November, December, can't remember exactly. And she called me up out of nothing, because we live like probably like 7 miles to 10 miles from each other. So he called me like, he goes like, get out of your house, see if you can observe the sky on to the south. I was like, why? Because I just saw a UFO in my backyard.
Oh,
I was like, what? So I immediately run out of, the door, didn't see anything. But then she started describing me that, and she was like washing the dishes, and she observed the cat was like, on top of the sofa, and there was the window, going to the backyard, and the
mhm.
cat was like laying there, and she looked at the cat. The cat was wholly illuminated, like a flashing light was
Oh,
coming through, like very white light. And she goes to the window, and she was like, she said like, I only saw it for like 2-3 seconds. This like square, very, bright, and just took off like unbelievable speed, like not so, but just shooting, just like darting, and she left like a streak of light, just like the reflection. So she goes, I don't know, I just saw that. So that was the first event. So when we asked, the hugger self, I was like, why did she have this event, this UFO? She goes like, oh, because they are monitoring him. They monitor her and her son,
oh,
always
yeah.
watching. Plus, she told me that besides the UFO, there in a couple of times at nighttime or even daylight, she shows these white orbs, the size of like a basketball, you
Hmm.
know, on the street. And guess what? She knew the neighbors cross the street. Somehow we had the conversation, with the neighbors, and they say, "Oh yeah, by the way, we saw these white and bluish lights coming back and forth." So it wasn't her, She's not like, imagining herself. No,
Yeah.
the witnesses besides her, the neighbors. So that was another confirmation that those were real.
Hmm.
Not that she's seeing through her eyes, through her mind or anything. No, they were physical, and they were, and Haggerson explained that these orbs or whatever, we saw them, they are like AI or bio AI, really. And they're just checking up all, these, my sister and her son, all the chemicals that they're being exposed to, just
Oh, okay.
monitoring,
Hmm.
everything that whatever he needs is they're always there, see what we know, what he's eating, exposed to the air pollution or whatever, but they're always there. And the funny thing is, like, after that, Himself mentioned in plural, because he goes like, he's not the only one, there's others.
Right.
I'm, what, others? And I was like, do we know them? He goes, some of them, yes. I was like, what? So he started mentioning, like, some people that we know that they're like, they have their, children, and some of them they are too, like a second waivers of volunteers too, and they
Mhm.
doing the same. And I asked immediately, like, do they know they've been checked on? They say no, the parents don't even know anything, but
Mhm.
the children, they have seen them, but they don't speak to anyone because they don't know what they are.
Right.
So the children are aware of that.
Uh-huh.
Isn't that interesting?
I think children are aware of a lot more than their parents know.
Exactly.
Thank you for watching. Give us a thumbs up. It helps with the YouTube algorithm. Thank you.